If someone had told me that a single folded letter, hidden for 13 years, would shatter everything I believed about my son's life and death, I would have laughed. But the day I found that letter, tucked inside a dusty box in my attic, I realized my son had left behind a secret so heavy, so devastating, it had kept us apart even after death. And worse, he had left behind someone who had been waiting for me all along. I never imagined my life would feel so quiet. Not the peaceful kind of quiet that comes with age, but the hollow kind, the sort that echoes through the walls of a house built for laughter that no longer exists. I used to think grief shrank over time, like an old bruise, but I learned that some grief simply changes shape. It settles in the corners, in the patterns of daily life, waiting to be stirred awake. 13 years. 13 years since my son Daniel died. People say time heals, but those people never stood beside a closed casket, staring at a future that would never come. Daniel had been only 28, a car crash, a single phone call, and suddenly I was a mother with nothing left to mother. I held on to his things for years, every childhood drawing, every school trophy, every faded t-shirt from the college he never finished. Eventually, I accepted that peace didn't mean forgetting. It meant living with the pain without expecting it to leave. But all of that changed on a Thursday afternoon in late autumn. I had gone up to the attic to look for the Christmas decorations. Dust hung in the air like tiny floating ghosts, and the room smelled of old cedar and cardboard. I knew every box up there, or so I thought. But when I shifted a stack of old photo albums, I found a small wooden chest I didn't recognize. It was carved with delicate vines, the kind Daniel used to doodle on the edges of his school notebooks. A shiver worked its way up my spine. I knelt beside it, running my fingertips along the grooves. The wood felt cold, almost unfamiliar, though something inside me recognized it. The chest wasn't locked. When I lifted the lid, the hinges creaked like a whisper breaking the silence. Inside were a few photographs, a watch I thought he had lost years before, and a sealed envelope with my name on it. My heart lurches even now remembering the moment. I stared at my name, Mom. Just that. His handwriting, slanted, quick, a little messy, like he had written it in a hurry. My hands shook so badly I had to sit down before I tried to open it. I slid my nail beneath the flap, and the paper gave way softly, almost too easily. Inside was a letter folded twice. The edges were frayed, as though it had been handled many times before it was hidden away. I took a breath and opened it. Mom, if you're reading this, something has happened to me, something I hoped would never come to pass. I didn't know how to tell you this when I was alive, and I'm ashamed of that. But I have a son, and he needs you more than you know. My throat tightened. A son? Daniel had a son? The room spun slightly, and I had to blink several times to keep the words from blurring. I kept reading. His name is Michael. He's 5 now. He lives in Brooksville with his mother, Emily. Mom, I love them both, but I left because I thought it was the only way to keep them safe. I can't explain everything, not here, not yet. But if something happens to me, please find them. Please take care of my boy. I pressed my hand over my mouth as tears welled in my eyes. 5. That meant the boy, my grandson, would be 18 now, an adult, nearly grown, and I had never even known he existed. But the next lines chilled me in a way grief never could. The reason I kept him secret is because of something that happened years ago, something dangerous. I can't write it all down. If you try to find Emily and Michael, be careful. There are people who might still be watching. I hope I'm wrong. I pray I'm wrong. But I couldn't risk telling you the truth. If you find him, tell him I loved him. Tell him I never wanted to leave. The letter ended there. No signature, just the finality of a son who had died with more secrets than I could ever imagine. I sat there in that dusty attic, clutching the paper to my chest as tears soaked the ink. The world felt different, sharp, unfamiliar. I had spent 13 years grieving the son I knew. Now I found myself grieving the son I didn't. A grandson, a secret family, a danger that had stolen my son from both of us. For a long time, I just sat there, unable to move. The sun coming through the attic window shifted across the floor, turning golden as it sank lower. I don't know how long I was up there, but eventually, the cold crept into my bones and forced me to stand. I took the box downstairs with me, setting it on the kitchen table. I read the letter over and over again, looking for more, some clue, some hint, but there was nothing. Just the name of the town, Brooksville. I grabbed my laptop, fingers trembling as I typed the name into a search bar. It was a small town about 2 hours away. I clicked through maps, local pages, anything that could help. But searching Emily Brooksville gave me hundreds of results. I didn't know her last name, I didn't know where she lived, I didn't even know if she was still in that town. But Michael, a boy named Michael, now 18. That felt like something solid, something real. As the night deepened outside my kitchen window, I scoured everything, local yearbooks, community pages, sports team rosters, until I found him. Or rather, I found a boy who could only be him. A senior photo from the previous year. Dark hair like Daniel's, a shaped jaw, the same tired-lidded eyes my son had when he stayed up too late studying. His name, Michael Warren. The last name meant nothing to me, but the birth year listed on the school's alumni page matched exactly. My chest tightened. That was him, my grandson. The next morning, I drove to Brooksville. I rehearsed what I would say the entire 2-hour drive. Hello, I'm your grandmother. No, too abrupt. I knew your father. Too vague. Your father was my son. Too heavy. Nothing felt right. Nothing felt possible. Brooksville was small, charming in the way only towns with a single traffic light can be. The kind of place where people still waved from their porches and the sidewalks cracked beneath the roots of old oaks. I parked outside a small cafe near the center of town, hoping to gather myself before trying to find him. I ordered a coffee I barely tasted and sat near the window. That's when I saw him, or thought I did. A young man walked past the window, tall, shoulders slightly hunched, headphones around his neck. He looked so much like Daniel at that age that my heart nearly stopped. I stood up without thinking, knocking over my coffee. The waitress gasped, rushing over with napkins, but I barely heard her. I hurried outside. Michael? My voice cracked. Michael Warren? The young man stopped and turned. And in that moment, those few seconds as his eyes met mine, I saw Daniel. Not just in his features, but in the way he tilted his head, the way confusion flickered across his face exactly like his father's used to. Yeah, he said slowly. Do I know you? Tears gathered before I could stop them. My voice caught. How do you tell someone their entire life was lived in the shadows of a secret you were never meant to keep? I took a shaky breath. I'm your grandmother. His eyebrows shot up as he took a step back, startled. My grandmother? No, my grandmother died years ago. I know, I whispered, my throat thick. I'm your father's mother. He froze, completely. My father? His voice dropped to almost a whisper. My mom never told me anything about him. She said he wasn't around. He wanted to be, I said quietly. He loved you more than you know. Michael's eyes grew damp, as though he didn't want to believe me, but couldn't bring himself to deny what he saw in my face. Then his expression changed, darkened. Not with anger, with something else, something like fear. He glanced around the street, as if checking whether someone was watching. Then he grabbed my arm, not harshly, but urgently. Come with me, he said. Not here. People talk in this town. A chill ran through me. Just like the letter. Someone watching. We walked quickly down the block to a small, quiet park. He sat on a bench beneath an old maple tree, and I sank onto the seat beside him. He stared at me for a long moment, then said, "Why are you here? After all this time?" I swallowed. "I didn't know you existed until yesterday. Your father left me a letter. I only just found it." I hesitated. "He said he kept you secret because someone dangerous was involved." Michael's face paled. His jaw tightened. And then he said something that made the world tilt beneath me. My mom always said Dad didn't leave because he didn't want us. He looked away, his voice low and trembling. She said he left because we were being followed. I felt my breath catch. Followed? By who? He looked back at me, eyes dark with something I couldn't yet understand, and he whispered, "And the people your son stole from." Everyone tells lies, but what if one small lie could completely destroy your life and everyone you love? What if the truth you've been hiding was the very thing that could shatter your perfect world? This is the story of the perfect lie. It started on a rainy Tuesday, the kind where the clouds press down on the city like a suffocating weight, and the streets glimmer with wet reflections of neon signs. Emma Reed walked briskly, her heels clicking against the slick pavement, not because she liked the rain. It was a habit, a way to keep moving, to avoid thinking, but because she had somewhere to be. Somewhere that would change everything. Her phone buzzed in her coat pocket, vibrating against her hip. She pulled it out and saw a message from Mark. "Are you sure about this?" She stared at it for a long moment, letting the raindrops blur the words, as if the rain could wash away the tension in her chest. She typed back quickly, almost too quickly, "I have to be, no turning back." And she sent it. Emma had built her life meticulously, like a craftsman piecing together a fragile glass sculpture. Every relationship, every success, every word she spoke had been calculated to appear flawless. To everyone around her, she was the perfect daughter, the ideal friend, the woman with everything under control. But perfection has a price, and the price of Emma's was a secret buried so deep that even she struggled to remember what it felt like to breathe without it weighing her down. She arrived at the small apartment building, a nondescript structure that blended into the gray of the city, and let herself in. The hallway smelled faintly of damp carpet and bleach. She paused outside apartment 3B, her hand trembling over the doorknob. Her mind raced with every possible outcome, every disaster she could create with a single wrong word. But there was no turning back. She had rehearsed this conversation 100 times in her head, but rehearsed or not, the fear in her stomach was real. Inside, the room was dim, the blinds drawn against the relentless rain. Mark was there, sitting on the edge of the sofa, his expression unreadable. He looked up as she entered, and for a moment, the weight of the years they'd shared, the trust, the betrayals, the love, hung in the air between them. "You're late," he said, but it wasn't accusation, it was relief mixed with anticipation. "I had to make sure no one was watching," she whispered, pulling off her coat. Her voice was steady, but inside, she was shaking like a leaf in a storm. Mark stood and approached her cautiously. "Emma, whatever this is, it doesn't have to." "I can't wait any longer," she interrupted, her words slicing through the tension. "It's now or never." Mark's eyes darkened with something she couldn't read, something older, sharper. "Are you sure you're ready for this?" She nodded, though inside she felt a tremor of doubt. She had crafted this lie, this perfect lie, to protect everything she loved. Or, at least, that was what she told herself. But lies, Emma had learned, are like a snowball rolling downhill. They start small, harmless even, but once they gather momentum, nothing can stop the destruction they leave behind. Emma reached into her bag and pulled out a folder, her hands surprisingly steady. She handed it to Mark, who took it with a frown. "What is this?" "A confession," she said simply. "The truth, finally. Everything I've hidden, everything I've lied about, it's all in here. And once you read it, there's no going back." He opened the folder and began to read. Emma watched his face carefully, looking for the telltale signs of shock, anger, disbelief, but his expression remained unreadable, almost too calm. She wanted to see the fire, the tears, something, anything that would confirm that her revelation had the impact she feared and yet craved. "You lied to me," he said finally, his voice low. "Everything?" "Not everything," she admitted, biting her lip. "Some of it, I had to lie for us, for our future. I never wanted to hurt you, Mark. I never wanted to destroy us." He put the folder down on the coffee table and leaned back, running a hand through his hair. "Emma, do you have any idea what you've done?" "I do," she whispered. "I know." The rain outside intensified, drumming against the windows like a warning. Mark didn't answer for several long minutes, and the silence was suffocating. Finally, he spoke, but his tone was eerily calm, the kind of calm that frightened Emma more than anger ever could. "You're going to have to leave," he said. Her stomach dropped. Leave? Yes, for now, for your own safety and for mine. I don't understand. You will, he said. I just need time. Time to process, time to decide if this can ever be fixed. Emma felt the weight of her own creation pressing down on her. The lie she had thought would protect everything she loved was unraveling faster than she could manage. She wanted to argue, to insist, but the truth, her truth, was now a stranger to both of them. She gathered her coat silently, feeling the sting of tears she refused to let fall. As she stepped into the rain, the city swallowed her whole. And for the first time, Emma Reed felt small, vulnerable, human. That night, she sat alone in her apartment, staring at the ceiling as the rain continued its relentless assault. She had imagined a perfect ending to her confession: relief, forgiveness, maybe even understanding. Instead, she faced an emptiness she hadn't felt in years. The perfect lie had been told, and now the consequences loomed like shadows in the corners of her life. A knock at the door startled her. She froze. Who could it be at this hour? She approached cautiously, peering through the peephole. No one, just the rain-soaked darkness. When she turned back, her phone buzzed again. Another message from Mark. You need to disappear for a while. Trust me. Emma's hand trembled as she typed a reply. I'll try. I'll do whatever it takes. And in that moment, she realized the lie she had crafted so perfectly might be the very thing that destroyed her life, piece by piece. Days passed, and Emma disappeared from her usual routines. Friends called, but she made excuses. Family emergency, work obligations, an unexpected trip. Each lie built upon the other, a fragile scaffold keeping her reality from crumbling. But with every call she avoided, every street she crossed cautiously, Emma felt the weight of the lie pressing heavier. Mark didn't contact her again, not directly, but she noticed subtle signs that he was watching, testing, waiting. Letters left anonymously, small messages scrawled in public spaces. I know the truth. You can't hide forever. The perfect lie has a price. Emma tried to ignore them, tried to immerse herself in work, in books, in anything that would drown out the gnawing fear in her chest. But deep down, she knew she couldn't escape. Lies have a way of hunting you down, creeping into every corner of your life until there's nowhere left to run. One evening, as she walked home under the dim glow of streetlights, she noticed a figure across the road, standing perfectly still in the rain. For a fleeting moment, she thought it was a stranger, but the silhouette was too familiar. Her heart skipped, her pulse raced, and when the figure stepped forward into the light, she gasped. Mark. And in his eyes, she didn't see anger or forgiveness. She saw a reckoning waiting patiently, deliberately, for the moment she would have no choice but to face the truth. Emma's perfect lie was no longer hers alone. It had taken on a life of its own, one that threatened to consume everything she had ever loved, everything she had ever been. And she realized, with a shiver that ran down her spine, that this was only the beginning. Days passed, and Emma disappeared from her usual routines. Friends called, but she made excuses: family emergency, work obligations, an unexpected trip. Each lie built upon the other, a fragile scaffold keeping her reality from crumbling. But with every call she avoided, every street she crossed cautiously, Emma felt the weight of the lie pressing heavier. Mark didn't contact her again, not directly, but she noticed subtle signs that he was watching, testing, waiting. Letters left anonymously, small messages scrawled in public spaces. I know the truth. You can't hide forever. The perfect lie has a price. Emma tried to ignore them, tried to immerse herself in work, in books, in anything that would drown out the gnawing fear in her chest. But deep down, she knew she couldn't escape. Lies have a way of hunting you down, creeping into every corner of your life until there's nowhere left to run. One evening, as she walked home under the dim glow of streetlights, she noticed a figure across the road, standing perfectly still in the rain. For a fleeting moment, she thought it was a stranger, but the silhouette was too familiar. Her heart skipped, her pulse raced, and when the figure stepped forward into the light, she gasped. Mark. And in his eyes, she didn't see anger or forgiveness. She saw a reckoning waiting patiently, deliberately, for the moment she would have no choice but to face the truth. Emma's perfect lie was no longer hers alone. It had taken on a life of its own,
one that threatened to consume everything she had ever loved, everything she had ever been. And she realized, with a shiver that ran down her spine, that this was only the beginning. Part 2. Emma froze, her breath caught in her throat as Mark stepped closer, rain dripping from the brim of his coat. The city around them was a blur of wet asphalt and neon lights, but all she could focus on was him, the man she had loved, betrayed, and feared in equal measure. "You followed me," she whispered, though it wasn't really a question. "I did," he said, his voice calm, but with an edge that made her stomach twist. "You think you can disappear, hide behind excuses, avoid the truth, but lies have a way of finding their way home. Always." Emma wanted to shrink back, to run, but something in her held her in place. It wasn't courage, not exactly. It was curiosity, the kind that only comes when you know you've set events into motion that can't be stopped. "Mark, please," she said softly, "I never meant." "You never meant to hurt me, right?"
The road to Pine Hollow stretched long and lonely, lined with towering pines that swallowed half the sky. The deeper we drove, the more it felt like we weren't just leaving Brooksville behind. We were driving into the heart of a truth buried for nearly 2 decades. The car hummed beneath us, and every once in a while, Michael would glance in the side mirror, checking if we were being followed. We weren't, at least not yet. I kept my hands tight on the wheel. The road curved sharply, dipping through valleys where mist clung low over the asphalt. I stole a look at Michael, his jaw clenched, eyes fixed forward. He reminded me so much of Daniel in moments like this. That same quiet determination, the same stubborn streak. But beneath it all, I could see the fear. Not just for himself, for what he was about to uncover. "How far is this friend's house?" I asked softly. "Another 15 minutes, he murmured. "Her name's Claire. Mom used to say she was the only person she trusted after everything." "What exactly was everything?" I pressed gently. Michael hesitated, running a hand through his hair. "Mom never told me, not directly. She said Dad made a mistake trying to help someone, that he got caught in something he didn't understand." He drew in a shaky breath. "She said she didn't blame him, but she couldn't protect me if she didn't keep away from him." My throat tightened. The idea that my son had spent his last years alone, not because he wanted to be, but because he believed it kept his family safe, was a wound I didn't know how to carry. "And she trusted this Claire?" "She did," Michael said. "But after Mom disappeared, Claire told me not to come to her house. She said it wasn't safe." His voice wavered. "But she also told me, if anything ever happened to Mom, I needed to come anyway." A cold knot settled in my stomach. We drove the rest of the way in silence. Pine Hollow was barely a town, more of a clearing where a few homes rested between trees that had been there longer than any of us. Claire's house stood near the end of a dirt road, a small cabin with a sagging porch and windows that glowed with the faintest flicker of yellow light. When I parked, Michael didn't get out immediately. He stared at the house with a tightness in his expression I didn't understand. "You okay?" I asked. He swallowed hard. "I don't know." "We can do this together," I said gently. He nodded once. Then we stepped out. The cold night air bit at our faces. Crickets chirped somewhere in the dark, and the wind whispered through the trees like a warning. Michael knocked on the door softly at first, then harder. A voice from inside called, "Who is it?" "It's Michael," he answered. Silence. Then rapid footsteps. The door unlocked, and a woman in her late 50s swung it open. Her hair was gray and pulled into a loose bun, her eyes sharp behind glasses. When she saw Michael, her breath hitched. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Michael, I told you not to come here." "You told me to come if something happened to Mom," he said, voice breaking, "and something dead." Her face crumpled. "Come inside, quickly." We stepped into a cramped living room, lined with books, old photographs, and maps pinned to the walls. Claire shut the door, locked it, then pulled the curtains closed. Only then did she look at me. "And you?" she asked sharply. I took a breath. "My name is Margaret. She's my grandmother," Michael said quietly. Claire's eyes widened. For a long moment she just stared. Then her face softened.
So, it's time. Time for what? I asked. Claire motioned for us to sit. For you to learn the truth, all of it. Michael and I sat on the couch while Claire paced like a woman carrying a story too heavy for one heart. She began slowly. Your son, Daniel, was a good man. Too good, maybe, and that's what got him killed. About 20 years ago, Daniel got involved with a man named Victor Hale. He thought Victor was just a coworker having a hard time, but Victor was laundering money for a very dangerous group, people who hid behind legitimate businesses. When Victor got too scared to continue, he confided in your son. My stomach lurched. Daniel would never. I know, Claire cut in. Daniel didn't steal anything. He didn't take a dime for himself. Victor gave him an envelope to hold on to, told him it was insurance, something that could expose the entire operation. Daniel thought he was helping a friend. He didn't know what he was holding. Then what was in the envelope? Michael asked, leaning forward. Claire took a deep breath. Files, bank records, names, addresses, codes. Enough evidence to destroy the entire network. Victor planned to use it as leverage to negotiate his way out. And my dad? Michael whispered. Your father didn't even know what he had, Claire said, but the men Victor stole the files from, they knew exactly who he had given them to, and they came looking. The air in the room seemed to disappear. Daniel went on the run, Claire continued softly. He left to protect Emily and Michael. He thought if he disappeared, they'd stop searching. But they didn't, I fainted. No, Claire met my eyes. They didn't. A cold shiver crawled through my spine. So, the men who came to the house, Michael murmured? Claire nodded grimly. They're part of what's left of that organization. They must think Emily knew where the files were. They must have taken her because they still don't have them. My heart pounded painfully. And what happened to Daniel? Claire looked down at her hands. He contacted me 2 days before he died. He told me he wanted to turn the files into the police, end it all, for good. I felt tears well, burning. He never got the chance, she whispered. Michael clenched his fists. So, they killed him? Claire hesitated. She sat down across from us, meeting our eyes slowly, heavily. No, she said quietly. Daniel died in a real accident. But he was so exhausted, so paranoid, I can't help but think the fear pushed him past his limits. She swallowed. He was running from men who never even knew his name yet, but he thought they did. I covered my mouth with shaking hands. Grief, guilt, and relief tangled painfully inside me. He died trying to protect us, Michael whispered. He did, Claire said firmly. He died a good man. Michael wiped his face with the sleeve of his jacket. But what about my mom? He asked. Where is she? Is she still alive? Claire glanced nervously around the room. I don't know, but I think they're still looking for something. Something your father hid. The envelope, the evidence, the only thing that could break everything open. Michael suddenly sat up straighter. His eyes widened. Grandma, the box. He opened the metal box on his lap and dug through the photos until he reached the bottom. His fingers brushed something taped beneath the lining. A tiny, flat packet. He peeled it off. Inside was an envelope. Old, worn, yellowed with age. My breath caught. Claire leaned closer. Michael opened the envelope carefully, sliding the contents out. Documents, bank statements, lists of names, addresses, codes. Claire stared with horror. He kept them. All this time, he actually kept them. Michael looked like he might break apart. So this is why they took Mom. I reached for his hand and squeezed him. And this is how we get her back. Claire stood up abruptly. You have 2 options, she said, her voice suddenly shaking. Turn it all in, blow the entire operation wide open. The FBI will protect you. What's the second option? Michael asked. Claire exhaled slowly. Run, disappear, before those men realize where the files ended up. Michael's face twisted in confusion. Why would we run? We have the truth. Because, Claire said sharply, these people don't care about truth. They only care about survival, and they will kill all 3 of you before this gets out. The room fell silent. painfully, suffocatingly silent. "What would Daniel want us to do?" I whispered. Claire didn't hesitate. He wanted this to end. That's why he was going to the police. Michael looked at me, eyes full of fear and hope all tangled together. "Grandma, I don't want to run anymore." I nodded softly. "Then we won't." Claire swallowed, then moved toward the kitchen phone. "I know an FBI contact, someone I trust. I'll call them." But before she reached it, there was a knock at the door. A heavy knock. Michael and I froze. Claire turned pale. "They found us," I whispered. "Not now." Another knock, harder. Then a voice. "Claire Spencer, this is Agent Rauch, FBI. We need to speak with you." Claire blanked. "Agent Rauch," she breathed. "That's my contact." Relief crashed over me so fast I nearly cried. Claire opened the door. A tall man flashed a badge, followed by 2 agents behind him. They entered quickly, sealing the door before saying another word. One of them looked at the documents spread across the table. "Ma'am, Agent Rauch said that evidence can take down an entire criminal syndicate." Michael lowered his voice. "Can you find my mom?" Rauch nodded. "If she's alive, we'll find her. These men won't be able to hide anymore." Michael's shoulders sagged with a relief that nearly broke me. Rauch looked at the 3 of us. "We'll put you under protection immediately." Michael turned to me slowly. His eyes, Daniel's eyes, were soft and full of something I didn't understand. "Grandma," he whispered, "you came looking for me. You didn't even know who I was, and you still came." My hand trembled as I reached up and cupped his cheek. "I lost 13 years. I won't lose another minute." He leaned into my hand. His voice cracked. "I'm glad you found me." Tears slid down my cheeks. I pulled him into my arms, and he wrapped his arms around me,